Anya Vance was a woman sculpted by ambition and hope, but on her wedding day, at 28, she felt like a beautifully wrapped package containing nothing but ruin. Outside the grand ballroom of the Hawthorne estate in upstate New York, snow fell gently, promising a picturesque Christmas Eve ceremony. Inside, Anya's pulse hammered a frantic rhythm against the satin collar of her bespoke gown. This was to be the most spectacular social event of the year, uniting the old money of the Hawthornes with Anya's newly inherited, sprawling land trust in Tennessee. Sterling Hawthorne, her fiancé, a man as sleek and cold as marble, was waiting. Just 2 hours before she was due to walk down the aisle, a nameless, guilt-ridden assistant slipped Anya a thick, leather-bound ledger. It detailed not a marriage, but a hostile corporate takeover. Page after page confirmed the horrifying truth. Sterling and his mother, Cecilia, planned to liquidate Anya's entire inheritance, the sole legacy of her late grandmother, to service the massive debts of their failing tech firm. The ledger even specified a 6-month timeline for a rapid, uncontested divorce, complete with a carefully worded prenuptial clause designed to leave Anya penniless and legally gagged. The love she thought she saw in Sterling's eyes was merely the gleam of an enormous, calculating deception. Rage, pure and scalding, washed away her heartbreak. Anya's hands shook as she wrote a short, vicious note, leaving it pinned to the silk lining of her abandoned dress. Her entire life, her dreams, her future, her grandmother's memory, had been reduced to collateral. She wasn't just betrayed in love, she was financially condemned. Acting on a sudden, wild impulse, she grabbed a heavy bronze letter opener and moved toward the ballroom centerpiece, a towering, antique porcelain vase, the one Cecilia Hawthorne proudly claimed was irreplaceable. With a decisive, savage swing, Anya brought the opener down, sending the priceless heirloom crashing into 1,000 glittering, fragmented pieces across the polished floor. She did not look back. Ripping the delicate lace from her shoulders and stuffing the skirt into a crumpled, filthy bundle, Anya grabbed the only things that mattered: her grandmother's simple silver locket and the worn canvas travel bag she'd carried when she first arrived in the city years ago. She fled through a service entrance and commandeered the limo Sterling had rented for her final ride to the church. The chauffeur, bewildered, followed her frantic commands until she dismissed him near a remote state highway, vanishing into the early, twilight snow. Now, Anya was completely alone. She walked the shoulder of the remote road, the ruins of her expensive gown tearing on thorny winter bushes. It was bitterly cold, and the air smelled of wood smoke and ice. Christmas Eve was in full swing, but for her, there was only the chill of isolation. She had no destination, no money accessible, and no clear plan beyond putting maximum distance between herself and the Hawthornes. She was weak, shivering uncontrollably, and starting to feel the heavy dread of exhaustion settle in her bones. Back where she abandoned the vehicle, Sterling's security team found the idling, empty limo. Panic seized the Hawthorne estate as the extent of the disaster, the destroyed heirloom, the vengeful note, and Anya's disappearance became clear. They knew she had fled, and they immediately dispatched teams to intercept her. They were searching for a runaway bride, not a corporate fugitive. The sky, which had been a clear, cold blue, suddenly turned a dark, angry gray. A violent, unexpected snow squall, a true whiteout, descended upon the remote highway. Visibility dropped to near zero, freezing Anya's eyelashes and burning her lungs. She stumbled off the road, half blinded and dizzy from dehydration. Her legs gave out just as she reached a massive, dilapidated stone wall bordering a vast, dark property. She collapsed, her trembling fingers curling around the cold, rigid bars of an immense, locked wrought iron gate. The bars felt like the cold, hard walls of a prison, and she was trapped on the outside, sinking into the snow, completely unaware that a light was glowing softly in a window just 50 feet away. Elias Thorne and his daughter, tucked warmly inside, were celebrating Christmas Eve, utterly oblivious to the desperate, freezing woman who had just collapsed right outside their home. Anya woke to a world of blinding white pain and the relentless, biting cold. Her lungs felt like splintered ice, and her limbs were heavy, numb weights. She was slumped against the unyielding, frigid bars of a tall iron gate, the snow continuing its cruel assault. It was the gate from her feverish nightmares, prison bars separating her from safety, or perhaps separating her from her executioners. She struggled to focus, her vision swimming with dark spots and bright, swirling flakes. Then she saw them. Just beyond the cold, menacing iron, two faces materialized out of the storm like ghosts. A man, rugged and unshaven, his eyes wide with a profound, startled terror, was grappling desperately with the rusted lock. Beside him, a little girl, no older than 5, dressed in brilliant red Christmas pajamas, peered out with a face contorted in shock and pity. Their expressions, raw and exposed, were focused entirely on her desperate, ruined state. Anya, clutching the bars, her thin dress offering no protection, was convinced they were Sterling's henchmen, here to capture her and drag her back to her doom. "Get away from me!" She tried to scream, but the sound was a pathetic, gasping choke in her throat. She pushed uselessly against the snowdrift, her fingers locked around the iron. The man, whose name was Elias Thorne, ignored her faint, desperate plea. His fear wasn't of her, but for her, as he saw the near-death pallor of her skin and the fragile rags of her clothing in the relentless blizzard. Finally, with a wrenching groan, the massive lock gave way. The gate swung inward just enough for Elias to rush out, wading through the drifts. He didn't speak. He simply lifted her, his arms surprisingly strong and gentle. The scent of pine and sawdust clung to his heavy woolen sweater, a powerful contrast to the sterile, expensive cologne Sterling favored. Anya, too weak to fight, could only cling to him, the fear slowly giving way to the dizzying rush of sheer exhaustion. She remembered the little girl, Eliza, looking up at them both, her shock transitioning into a silent, intense worry as Elias carried Anya across the threshold and into the small, rustic cottage. The warmth inside hit Anya like a physical wave. Elias settled her on a worn, comfortable sofa, quickly stripping off her soaked, tattered gown and wrapping her in layers of thick, woolen blankets smelling faintly of cinnamon and laundry soap. Eliza ran to fetch a cup of steaming liquid, her small face serious with the importance of her task. The home was simple, all sturdy wood, handmade furniture, and the bright, unpretentious cheer of a family Christmas. A stark, beautiful opposite to the cold, gilded cage of the Hawthorne estate. As the warmth slowly seeped back into her core, Elias knelt and spoon-fed her warm, savory soup. The simple, non-transactional kindness was overwhelming, pulling tears from Anya's eyes that she was too weak to wipe away. Eventually, the warmth and the peace allowed the exhaustion to claim her completely. She drifted into a deep, heavy sleep. Elias, quietly cleaning up the remnants of her shredded dress, felt a prickle of unease. He reached into the small, surviving pocket of the ruined garment, thinking he might find identification. His fingers brushed against a small, folded piece of thick paper. It was not a note, nor a driver's license, but a printout of an email transcript. The words were cryptic, referencing Asset 7 Alpha and a key code, 4927X. It went on to describe a massive offshore transfer scheduled for the next day, signed simply with the initial S. Elias, a man whose life was built on simple truth and honest craftsmanship, felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. This was not the paper of a heartbroken runaway bride. This was a piece of a high-stakes corporate crime, or perhaps, the vital key to her destruction. The realization hit him. The woman sleeping under his roof was either in terrible danger or running from a serious, potentially criminal, entanglement. Elias Thorne spent the morning after Christmas staring at the crumpled piece of paper, the chilling realization of its content weighing heavily on his shoulders. The key code, 4927X, felt like a ticking clock. His first priority, always and unchangeably, was Eliza. His instincts screamed that Anya Vance, despite her current state, was running from something monumental, perhaps something criminal. Yet, when he looked at her face, pale and fragile, etched with deep-seated sorrow, his gut told him she was the victim, not the perpetrator. He wrestled with the conflicting evidence, the damning corporate jargon in his hand versus the profound fear in the eyes of the woman who slept upstairs. When Anya finally woke, a little stronger but still guarded, Elias approached her with cautious concern. He didn't show her the paper. "Anya," he said gently, watching her closely. "What exactly are you running from? You are safe here, but I need to know the truth." She only offered fragments, vague words about a betrayal that cost her everything, her home, her future, and her family's legacy. She spoke of heartbreak and loss, but she carefully omitted the specifics of the financial fraud, fearing the brutal complexity would make her sound insane. Elias nodded, his expression unreadable. He made a silent decision, choosing to trust the character he saw emerging through her pain over the sinister text he had read. To give her space and keep Eliza safe from the unspoken tension, Elias moved Anya's things to the small, cozy attic room. She spent the rest of the day there, bundled in a borrowed quilt, staring out the window at the vast, silent expanse of snowy woods. The silence was deafening after the constant roar of the city and the high-pitched drama of her failed wedding. Immense shame settled over her. Shame for her naivete, for allowing herself to be so completely ruined. She felt utterly vulnerable, a discarded object hidden away in a stranger's remote home. Later that afternoon, a timid knock sounded on the attic door. It was Eliza, carrying a small, brightly colored drawing. The little girl, perceptive beyond her 5 years, offered Anya the crayon drawing, a wobbly picture of 3 stick figures standing near a vibrant, green Christmas tree, surrounded by bright red hearts. "It's us," Eliza whispered, her eyes serious. Anya's breath caught. Holding the simple, unconditional gift, she felt a crack in the icy wall around her heart. She hadn't experienced such selfless, pure love since her own grandmother passed away. In that moment, she stopped seeing Elias as just a kind stranger who had saved her, and began to see him as a genuinely good man with his own quiet battles. She noticed the dark circles under his eyes, the hurried way he was working on a huge, custom-carved wooden mantelpiece in the corner of the living room, clearly stressed by the looming deadline for a major carpentry project. As the sun began to set, casting long, peaceful shadows across the room, Elias invited Anya downstairs. The 3 of them settled on the couch, the air thick with unspoken secrets, to watch an old, sentimental Christmas movie. The feeling of shared, quiet normalcy was almost intoxicating. Then, during a commercial break, the screen cut to a breaking news alert. A massive, official-looking photograph of Anya, smiling brightly in a dress from months ago, flashed across the screen. The voice of a serious news anchor announced a national missing person alert, describing Anya Vance as having suddenly and tragically suffered a severe mental breakdown on her wedding day, making her a danger to herself. Sterling Hawthorne himself appeared on screen, looking appropriately distraught, his eyes wet with feigned concern. "Anya, please, my darling." Sterling pleaded directly into the camera, his voice heartbreakingly sincere. "Come home. We are worried sick. Your property is safe, but you need help. We love you." Simultaneously, the news ticker below flashed a detail about the Hawthorne Corporation filing a motion for emergency control over an unattended property and land trust belonging to the missing woman. Anya gasped, her fragile composure shattering instantly. Her face, inches from Elias's, was a mask of sheer, paralyzing terror. Elias looked at the screen, then down at the terrified woman beside him, and the dark shadow of suspicion from the previous day returned, harder and more intense than ever before. He knew, watching Sterling's masterful performance, that something was profoundly wrong, and he had to know exactly what he was protecting. The sight of Sterling Hawthorne's sincere, heartbroken face on the television screen was an electric shock of fear and fury. He was painting her as a mad woman, simultaneously filing papers to steal the very land he claimed to be protecting for her. The chilling audacity of the lie stole the air from Anya's lungs. She scrambled backward, knocking over a stack of old magazines, the noise echoing loud in the small living room. Elias reached out a hand, but she recoiled, driven by a desperate, immediate need for honesty. She knew she couldn't hide any longer. The lies she omitted were now as dangerous as Sterling's manipulations. "You have to listen to me, Elias," Anya insisted, her voice trembling but gaining sudden, fierce strength. "That man is a liar. They're not looking for a sick runaway. They're looking for a loose end." She sat him down by the cold hearth and laid out the entire, sordid scheme, speaking quickly, as if afraid the truth would shatter if she paused. She detailed the hidden ledger, the planned corporate raid on her inheritance, and the 6-month divorce plot. She confessed that her grandmother's land was the only thing standing between the Hawthornes and utter financial collapse. Elias listened, his face hardening with disgust, not toward Anya, but toward the sheer greed of the wealthy elite. He was a man of simple honor and clear right and wrong, and the calculated cruelty of the Hawthornes repulsed him. Yet, he still felt the unsettling awareness that she was withholding something, a detail she couldn't yet trust him with. The following day was Christmas Day, a quiet, snowy morning. Despite the immense tension hanging between them, the threat of the Hawthornes, the unspoken secret of the evidence, and the profound danger Anya represented, Elias refused to let the dread overshadow his daughter's holiday. He insisted on maintaining the festive, simple rituals for Eliza. "We have today," he told Anya, his voice firm. "We will deal with tomorrow." Anya found herself drawn into the comforting rhythm of their life. She helped Elias struggle with the dense, sticky dough for cinnamon rolls, laughing as he accidentally flower-bombed himself. She and Eliza worked together, carefully hanging glittering, decades-old glass ornaments on a humble pine tree. For the first time since her grandmother passed, Anya felt a genuine, uncomplicated joy. Her laughter, initially forced, became real and melodic. She connected with Elias not over a shared tragedy, but over a shared, simple philosophy of life, one where warmth, honesty, and small moments held more value than any corporate asset. This was a man who built things with his hands, who protected his child fiercely, and whose worth was measured in integrity, not currency. The day ended with a quiet meal and the soft glow of the fire. Just as Anya was starting to feel a fragile sense of peace, she moved to the window to pull the heavy curtain closed against the deepening Vermont twilight. That's when she saw it. Far down the long, winding dirt road leading to the secluded cabin, a slow-moving, black SUV with tinted, unmarked windows was creeping through the fresh snow. It paused, just at the edge of the woods. The driver's side window lowered a fraction, and a flash of light, the unmistakable glint of a camera lens, aimed directly at the cabin. The breath froze in Anya's throat. Her blood turned to ice. They hadn't just seen the news. They had tracked the limo, followed the breadcrumbs, and confirmed her location. The Hawthorns had found her. The security guard, now satisfied, turned the large vehicle around and drove slowly away, leaving behind only the fresh tire tracks in the snow. Anya stood motionless, the simple peace of their Christmas day shattered. She whispered the chilling truth to Elias. They know we're here. The tire tracks in the fresh snow were a cold, undeniable declaration of war. Sterling had found her. The fragile sense of safety that Anya had found in Elias's small, warm world instantly vaporized. She was no longer a victim seeking shelter. She was a target who had put a good man and his innocent daughter in imminent danger. In that moment, the timid, heartbroken runaway disappeared, replaced by the brilliant, sharp-witted, aspiring architect she used to be. The time for self-pity was over. They won't use the police yet, Anya stated, her voice clipped and professional as she paced the small living room. Not after painting me as unstable. They'll try to isolate me. They'll look for the easiest way to make me disappear, and they will start with fear. She used her deep, insider knowledge of the Hawthorne organization, its structure, its ruthless tactics, its weakness for avoiding public scandal, to predict their next move. She realized the full, terrifying implications of the scheme she had uncovered. They weren't just after her land. They were desperate to retrieve the primary source of evidence she had taken. Wait, she thought. What evidence did I take? Elias, seeing the transformation from fragile woman to focused strategist, was energized. His skills were practical, grounded in reality. We need to secure the perimeter, he said, his mind already working on structural solutions. He grabbed tools and lumber, and within minutes, the windows were reinforced and the back door was braced with heavy-duty locks he had fabricated himself. But Anya knew that wood and steel wouldn't stop a corporation worth billions. As he worked, Elias paused, his face etched with regret. He reached into his coat pocket and finally produced the crumpled paper he had found, the printout detailing Asset 7 Alpha and the key code 4927X. He placed it on the mantelpiece. I found this the night I brought you in, he confessed, his voice heavy with caution. I should have asked, but I didn't know who you were or who I could trust. Anya stared at the paper, and then back at Elias, a sharp pang of anger quickly giving way to understanding. Given the circumstances, she couldn't blame him. He was protecting his child. That's it, she breathed, realization flooding her. That's what they're truly panicked about. It's a key code to a shadow account holding the assets they plan to move after the divorce. It's the smoking gun I didn't even realize I had. Working with a shared, fierce determination, they spent the rest of the night side by side. Anya, fueled by coffee and vengeance, translated the corporate codes and financial jargon into a coherent, irrefutable narrative of fraud and betrayal. Elias, methodical and meticulous, helped her collate the transcript with the details she remembered from the stolen ledger, cross-referencing dates and bank names. The combination of her strategic insight and his practical, focused mind allowed them to construct a detailed, airtight dossier. This wasn't just evidence, it was a weapon. Just as the first sliver of dawn broke, bathing the snow-covered woods in cold, pale light, a sleek black town car, the kind that spoke of immense, untraceable wealth, pulled silently up to Elias's gate. It was Cecilia Hawthorne, Sterling's mother, a woman who radiated cold, surgical power. She stepped out, impeccably dressed, and approached the wrought iron barrier, carrying a single, intimidatingly heavy briefcase. Cecilia didn't bother with pleas or lies. She looked straight at Elias, who stood guarding the open door, and addressed him with the chilling practicality of a person closing a deal. "Mr. Thorne, we both know what this girl means to my family's reputation." She opened the briefcase, revealing thick stacks of neatly banded $100 bills. "Take this. It is enough to pay off your mortgage, secure your daughter's education, and never have to look at another piece of raw lumber again. Put Anya in my car, right now, and this is yours." She let the silence hang, then added the terrifying escalation. "Refuse, and I will ensure your carpentry business is ruined, your credit is destroyed, and a custody investigation finds your environment unsuitable for your little girl." The sight of Cecilia Hawthorne's open briefcase, overflowing with enough cash to buy a lifetime of comfort, did not sway Elias. He looked at the money, then at the cold, calculating woman before him, and then back toward the warm, simple lights of his home where Eliza slept. "Some things are not for sale, Mrs. Hawthorne," Elias stated, his voice quiet but rock-solid, "especially kindness and honor." The word honor hit Cecilia like a physical slap. It was currency she had never dealt in. "The answer is no. You will not destroy this girl's life, and you will not threaten my daughter." Cecilia's face, usually masked in perfect composure, twisted into a mask of pure, vindictive rage. She slammed the briefcase shut, the click sounding like a gunshot in the quiet morning air. "You fool," she hissed. "You have just signed the death warrant for your little, charming life. You will regret this." Without another word, she turned, got into the town car, and sped away, the vehicle spitting snow and gravel behind it. Anya, watching the entire, terrifying standoff from the attic window, was profoundly moved. She had witnessed Elias willingly choose ruin over betrayal, choosing her safety over his financial future and Eliza's security. His refusal was the most honorable act of acceptance she had ever known. The promised ruin was swift and surgical. Within the hour, the cabin's landline phone rang incessantly, followed by a torrent of digital notifications. Elias's major carpentry contract, the one meant to secure their finances for the next year, was abruptly canceled due to a fictitious breach of fiduciary trust. His business bank accounts were frozen, blocked by bogus fraud reports filed by Hawthorne lawyers. He was also served via email with an emergency injunction, demanding his immediate presence in court regarding a lawsuit for a colossal, fictitious debt. They were systematically dismantling his life, piece by simple piece. Elias Thorne, the man who only moments before had felt unbreakable, was suddenly moments from being completely ruined. Seeing the devastation, Anya didn't panic. The cold logic of her architectural training kicked in. She was still connected, even through Elias's simple satellite internet, to the corporate world she had spent years studying. She remembered an obscure, undersecured secondary server that the Hawthornes used for storing highly sensitive, off-the-books communications. Working with lightning speed, Anya, the rejected bride, became the digital infiltrator. Using her forgotten skills, she successfully bypassed the meager security protocols. She didn't seek to destroy, she sought to expose. Within minutes, she uploaded the complete, detailed dossier she and Elias had compiled, the transaction logs, the codes, and the summary of their fraud, to two highly secure external recipients, the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, and more importantly, the investigative reporters she knew from college, ensuring the evidence was public and untouchable. "It's done," she announced to Elias, her eyes bright with defiance. "They can freeze your accounts, but they can't unsee that." The leak immediately triggered a cascade of panic within the Hawthorne machine. Sterling, alerted by his mother, realized his carefully constructed world was collapsing. Desperate and shedding all pretense of subtlety, he drove to Elias's cabin himself, arriving a short time later in a flurry of snow and gravel. He wasn't alone. Pulling up directly to the iron gate was a marked vehicle belonging to the local county sheriff. Sterling, pale with rage and fear, stepped out and was quickly joined by Sheriff Harlan, a beefy man whose eyes darted nervously between Sterling's expensive suit and the remote location. Sterling, pointing frantically toward the cabin, shoved a document into the sheriff's hands, a fraudulent emergency restraining order claiming Elias was holding Anya Vance, a distraught victim, captive against her will. "Do your job, Sheriff," Sterling screamed. The sheriff, having been handsomely bribed, reluctantly stepped forward. As the sheriff began to read the fabricated order, Sterling lunged past him, wrenching the old iron gate open with primal fury. He stormed toward Anya, who had rushed outside to stand beside Elias. Sterling grabbed her arm with brutal force, trying to physically drag her toward his car. "You're coming home, you crazy fool," he snarled. Elias immediately stepped between them, but the corrupt Sheriff Harlan was already raising his hand, preparing to slap the handcuffs onto Elias's wrist. "Sir, I advise you to stand down," the sheriff barked. Elias was seconds away from being arrested, and Sterling was about to drag Anya to her doom. The moment Sterling Hawthorne's grasping, furious hand tightened around Anya's arm, and Sheriff Harlan's hand reached for the handcuffs, the air fractured with a sudden, chaotic sound of approaching engines. Elias braced for the arrest, ready to fight for Anya, but then a series of sleek, dark sedans and a brightly lit news van skidded to a stop just outside the iron gate. The timing was nothing short of miraculous. First out of the news van was Chloe Davis, the investigative reporter Anya had contacted, flanked by a camera operator whose light immediately zeroed in on the confrontation. "Ms. Vance, we received the documents. We have questions for Mr. Hawthorne regarding corporate fraud," Chloe shouted, shoving a microphone towards Sterling's rapidly paling face. Simultaneously, the doors of the sedans opened, revealing stern, dark-suited figures who quickly identified themselves as federal agents from the SEC. They were not there for Elias. "Mr. Sterling Hawthorne," one of the agents announced, his voice carrying unmistakable authority. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice." Another agent moved immediately to the county sheriff, efficiently relieving him of his weapon and badge. "Sheriff Harlan, you are also under arrest for conspiracy and attempted coercion." Sterling shrieked, protesting his innocence, but it was too late. He was swiftly handcuffed, the image of the defeated, narcissistic executive being dragged away by federal agents playing out live for the assembled camera crew. Anya was safe. In the quiet, stunning aftermath, as the police lights receded and the snow began to fall softly again, Elias and Anya stood together by the gate, watching the last vestiges of Sterling's power vanish down the road. The immediate danger was gone, leaving behind a profound stillness and the beginning of spring. Over the next few months, Anya worked tirelessly. With the irrefutable evidence she and Elias had compiled, she successfully reclaimed her inherited property in Tennessee. The Hawthorne Corporation, under intense scrutiny and multiple federal lawsuits, dissolved into spectacular ruin. Anya was free, financially secure, and professionally vindicated. She was left with a choice: return to the sleek, sophisticated architectural world of Atlanta, or stay in the quiet, honest simplicity of Vermont. She chose the latter. When the local town council, impressed by her integrity and talent, offered her the contract to redesign and rebuild the town's historic, fire-damaged library, she accepted without hesitation. The most important decision, however, came later. Sitting with Elias one sunny afternoon, reviewing the plans for the new library, Anya pushed the blueprints toward him. "I don't just need a contractor, Elias," she said, meeting his eyes. "I need a partner. This building needs an unbreakable foundation, and it needs the honesty and craftsmanship that only you can provide. I want you as the head carpenter, integrating your vision into mine." Elias, overwhelmed by the professional respect and deeper truth in her words, simply nodded, his heart swelling. On a perfect, late summer afternoon, standing on the newly framed foundation of the library, Elias reached into his pocket. He pulled out a small, exquisite object, a simple, perfectly rendered locket carved from a piece of old cherry wood he had salvaged. It was the same size and shape as the simple silver locket she had lost on that snowy night. A beautiful, sturdy replacement crafted with care. He gently placed it in her hand. "Anya," he began, his eyes reflecting the deep green of the surrounding trees. "You arrived here in rags, running from betrayal. I saw your fear, but I also saw your strength and your unwavering kindness to Eliza. I love you, not because I saved you, but because you showed me what it means to choose honor over wealth and to build a life on truth." Anya, the strong, intelligent woman who had survived the worst kind of corporate betrayal, no longer felt like the rejected bride. She was a woman fully accepted and seen. She smiled, a deep, genuine smile of profound contentment. "I accept you, Elias Thorne," she said, her fingers closing around the warm wood. "Not for your protection, but for accepting me when I had nothing left to give." The final shot settled on the three of them, Elias, Anya, and Eliza, who was holding both their hands, standing together, looking up at the beautifully framed structure of the new library. It wasn't just a foundation of wood and stone. It was the start of their new life, built on integrity and the enduring, powerful worth of empathy. The greatest inheritance, Anya finally understood, was not the land she fought for, but the true family she had gained.